So at the end, I'm going to ask each of you to share like a short, kind of catchy, phrase to close with, or thought, or kind of highlight, right? So maybe you can be thinking of that in the last few minutes before, but that will be right at the end. Let's end with something short, sharp, punchy. What's your final word? Kind of thing. Good afternoon, lady and gentlemen, and I hope you're all well. I'm going to ask you to just prepare to unmute yourselves when I come to you. Before I come to you, if you're not speaking, you may remain on mute. We will be starting in the next moment or so. So just getting everybody ready. Thank you very much. And we have just hit 3 p.m. in Nairobi, Kenya. A warm welcome to everybody who's coming in for this live stream on EdTech Mondays. It's our very first one here in Kenya. It has been running for a while in Rwanda, and so we follow suit, and hopefully we will be launching this across other African countries as well. What is EdTech Monday? We are here to build a conversation around leveraging technology to advance education and learning outcomes. We want to understand what it means to adopt technology and innovation for educational purposes. We want to understand how to share knowledge and understanding and build best practice around doing this. And we want to mainstream the use of technology for education. So that's why we are here. To get us started, I'll introduce myself. My name is Julie Gishuru. I'm the head of public affairs and communications at Mastercard Foundation. And for welcome remarks now, a warm welcome to our regional head for Eastern and Southern Africa and our country, Daniel Hailo. Over to you, Daniel.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you for that welcome. And yeah, just picking up where Julie left off. So EdTech Monday in Kenya is getting off to a start that really is being primed by an environment that's seeing the prominence and the necessity of technology-enabled education delivery. COVID-19 has put us in a position where if it wasn't for technology-enabled delivery mechanisms, we would be struggling. And even today, we know we have a long way to go. And as the Mastercard Foundation's COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience Program is attempting to do, education technology is one of the 3 pillars we're focusing on. And we couldn't imagine a better time for us to be having this conversation in this forum. And I would just say this is an initiative, this is an idea that we have been incubating in the Mastercard Foundation since last year under the Mastercard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT. So it's not new to us. We just have found ourselves in a position where it's become such a prominent and such a hot topic that today's conversation hopefully will extend our understanding of the need, but also get to share with you what we're doing about it and what we hope to achieve as well with our initiative. So with that said, Julie, I look forward to the conversation today. Again, it's the first one, and we know that we'll have a great conversation today. And I'm back to you. Thank you.
Right, Daniel, before you run away, for those people who might be asking, who's Mastercard Foundation? Why is this important to the foundation? In less than 1 minute, what is Mastercard Foundation? Why is this important?
So Mastercard Foundation is one of the largest foundations in the world. We are very active on the continent. We have been working under our Young Africa Work strategy for the last 2 years. The initiative for EdTech is one of the things we've been working in. At the end of it, it really comes down to our ability to support the enablement of education delivery to vulnerable communities across the board in across the continent. And this is simply one element of the work we're doing. Excited to be part of this conversation, and we know very well that there's an awful lot of learning to be had, and learning is really one of the key values that we bring to the table, and this conversation will hopefully extend that.
Thank you very much for that, Daniel, much appreciated. I'm going to now welcome the panelists to this session, and we have an incredible panel today. First and foremost with us is Joseph Nsengimana, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Joseph, the head of the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT. It's a Mastercard Foundation center based in Kigali, Rwanda. Joseph, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Also with us is Jennifer Otieno, who is the founder of Education Design Unlimited. And Jennifer is the co-founder of EdTech East Africa. Thank you, Jennifer, for making time to be with us as well.
Thank you so much, Julie.
And we have with us John Kimodo, the Senior Deputy Director of Educational Media Services, Kenya Institute for Curriculum Development, who, of course, have been doing a lot of work reframing the way we learn. John, great to have you with us. You are on mute, but we will come to you shortly. No worries at all about that. Okay, so what are we looking at this first week? We're trying to take a look at the reality following COVID. School closures happened. Immediately, parents realized, what are we going to do? Children need to continue learning. How do we adjust and adapt? Some schools and some students have been able to, others, it's been a struggle. Let's start by taking a look at what has happened, what's the reality, and how have we been trying to respond to the current reality? Joseph, let me begin with your views on this. What are you seeing happening now with children at home? How are people adapting? What's working, what's not working? Let's begin with you.
Thanks, Julie. I think that you quite phrased it correctly in a sense of with the COVID-19, we've seen that with the lockdown, the school closures, the students are now confined to their homes, and it is fair to say that we've been caught unprepared. That means that schools were not prepared to deliver learning outside the school walls. And so there was a rush to trying to find a solution. And this is true to Kenya, and it's true to all other countries as well. And so really, as you will see, and I'm sure as you experience as a parent yourself, is that students are now trying to use a gamut of platform in order to continue learning. So some of them are being done independently. That means it's a parent finding solutions online and just getting their kids to it. Others are working through the schools. So some schools are able to provide some sort of online services. And others are following on radio, following on TV. And so there is an unevenness, if you will, on how kids are learning. But across board, there is a realization that more could have been done to prepare. And hopefully, this will serve us as a lesson, as a way to really look forward as we come out of this pandemic.
Thank you for that, Joseph. I want to pull on the more could have been done thread, Jennifer, as I come to you, because this really is your area. It's what you do. So new approaches to learning are being adopted where we can, because there are others who don't have opportunities, and we'll see the feedback and speak to some of that. But how effective are they? And what could we have done better? What can we adjust and adapt to make it more effective in application in today's reality?
Sure. Yeah, and I think the impetus began that the sort of a focus on ICT and learning began many years ago, and KICD has integrated this into a lot of their policy discussions, as I'm sure John will talk about. It's been an area of focus. We knew that this was something that was going to be important. I think the urgency, though, wasn't there quite as much. And as Joseph said, all of a sudden we've been caught off guard because we knew that that technology-enabled learning was going to be important. We just didn't know it was going to be so important and so critical so quickly. And so I think for a lot of us, the EdTech East Africa community, we've been meeting for the last 5.5 years here in Kenya, coming together every month to discuss different ways of creating better learning experiences that are powered by technology. And for those folks that are out there, that doesn't just mean online learning. It means using a variety of different types of technologies to be able to serve all learners. So that includes digital learning, it includes mobile applications, it includes TV, it includes radio. When we think of different technologies and different access levels to access across the country, we want to make sure that we're including all of our learners. So I think we've started to see, I think Kenya has one of the most vibrant ecosystems actually across the continent of EdTech players. And we've got amazing innovations locally. So we do have a lot of people that are putting a focus on creating great solutions. I think it's now, to Joseph's point about, is there enough awareness? Is there enough capacity that's been built for teachers, for parents, for communities to be able to embrace these tools and to use them effectively to make sure that all learners are able to continue with their education?
Thank you. Thanks for that, Jennifer. And I think, the important word is all. So again, coming to the whole idea that we leave nobody behind, we do not create divides. And that brings me perfectly to how the Kenyan government has responded. John, coming over to you. And how has KICD embraced technology to help learning continue? I know there's a raft of things. Maybe talk us through what's been done. What actually are you finding is effective and what's maybe not working as well? What are you learning?
Thank you, Judy, and everyone who is listening to me now. It's not easy to talk about what is happening now and the challenges without looking back at where we have come from. Serving in a government institution and in a country where education is free for all, then we always look at technologies that will serve as many as possible. Back in 1967, many years back, Kenya started using radio for education. And it was not until 2010 when we started the television. Indeed, I was a pioneer in this because I became head of educational media in 2008. So we started using television, not because radio was not working, but because there are processes and procedures that needed to be explained and be seen. So we were now combining the use of radio and the use of television at the same time, so that when you are serving various subjects and various audience, then they can be served with that. And then later, starting 2017, we started the Kenya Education Crowd, and purposively again for making education available anytime, anywhere. Because both radio and television are terrestrial in terms of transmission, and they have a kind of like a timetable. But then there is need to make education available anytime, anywhere. And in comes Kenya Education Crown to provide that. Now, when COVID came to us, and that was March 16th, when the learning institutions in Kenya were closed, we had, for about 2 weeks, seen this could be coming. And we had started asking ourselves, what will we really do? And at that point is when we looked back and said, the lessons that we are giving on radio and the lessons that we are giving on television are lessons that are supplementing what the learner has learned. But now the learner is not going to school. How do we contain them in a way that they feel there is continuation of what they were learning? Again, in Kenya at the educational media, we have a center that is a resource center. And though at that time it was very difficult even to travel and there was a lockdown, we were able to get enough teachers in that center and enough technical crew. And we lived there 24/7. So that in the process, then we are able to make radio lessons that are geared towards reaching a learner who has not gone to class, television lessons that are geared towards reaching a learner who has not gone to class. And therefore, the teachers were able to get to the studio and teach like they are teaching their own children in a classroom. So this material now became fresh in terms of intervention to the COVID-19. But we also noted that as soon as we started doing the radio, there was need to increase because we were using only one radio station. And in about a month time, we were actually using 40 radio stations. And the radio stations are community radio stations. So they were coming through and saying, we want to serve our community better. We want to serve our children. And they were asking for the radio lessons so that the same radio lessons that were on the national broadcaster went into the community radios. And in a month's time, we had 40 radio stations covering Kenya. We could say almost every dot was now being covered. And in radio, the question was, is there anyone who does not know they can listen to this? Because we were feeling that we are covering the entire country. On television, again, EduTV, the Communications Authority of Kenya, who is the regulator of media, declared it a must carry by all television distributors. That again increased the reach because it didn't matter who the television distributor is, EduTV was available for those hours. And therefore we came to terms that we need to be releasing our broadcast timetables monthly and not quarterly so that we can be able to catch up with the feedback we are receiving. At that point, we also put the EduTV on YouTube just to make it easy again. And finally, we put everything on Kenya Education Crowd. All the content that was being put in the laptops, in the schools, in public schools, was now brought on Kenya Education Crowd for free access, and that multiplied in terms of the available resources. We, at the end of April, thought it is good to do a survey and ask ourselves how much are we reaching and where do we need to improve? And that survey indicated that among the people we were able to reach for this survey, who were about 1,200 teachers and 800 learners through the parents, both in primary and secondary, about 90% of them were already aware of the kind of transmission that is going on. And between 77 and 78% of the learners were also aware that they were to listen to this, and their parents were actually persuasive in terms of making them reach and got the learning. Finally, in the same note, about 64% of the schools had reached out to their learners so that they can be able to listen to this. I don't know whether I stop there or could I cover the challenges that we are going through?
Very briefly go into challenges because I'd love to take some of the questions, comments. So very briefly, thank you.
Okay, so at that moment, when we checked on the challenges we are going through, we realized there was need for interactivity. And therefore, on Kenya Education Crowd, we started having remote classrooms. We were able to bring in 205,000 teachers and about 1.5 million learners onto Kenya Education Crowd. And today, about 1,000 teachers from public schools are actually holding classrooms with their learners. The challenges that we are finding is one, the internet connectivity. The teachers need to have free data bundles so that they can run through. The other challenge is about parental empowerment. How do parents manage the children so that the children can benefit from this? Other than that, I think the going is going on well and the reach can be improved with a lot of awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for taking us through that. So really radio and reaching within a month, 40 radio stations. I think, TV, but moving it then to YouTube and to the cloud, and saying now you've been able to have interaction happen via the cloud space, 200,000 teachers and 5 million learners, but huge challenges around internet connectivity and parental empowerment. And lots of parents have contributed their views to this discussion. So I'm going to come to that in just a moment. Jennifer, great to see you back. Jennifer had dropped off for a bit, and she's back.
Sorry, I also had internet connectivity issues. Sorry.
Those are the challenges parents are facing at home right now.
Perfect example.
Those who are able to have a gadget and data, because we know so many others don't even have the gadget and the data. I want to read a comment that was shared with us. Marianne Morathi said, great conversations. As a lecturer and teacher in this time period has challenged us to be innovative when it comes to passing knowledge and skills to our students and learners. That's a thought coming in. So how do we maybe support more our teachers? Somebody else just on this live stream mentioned, Sarah Abdel Salam said it's the digital gap that's getting wider. It's clearly a problem. John, you've pointed to the need. I think it's clear. Joseph or Jennifer, I don't know who wants to jump in here first. How do we make it practical? We know what our realities are, and it's interesting to be innovative. But how do we ensure that even as we are being innovative, it works for the majority? Joseph?
Thanks, Julie. And that is a challenging question, to be honest with you. But I think that in the definition of creativity, it's included, in essence, to look at what do we have today and how do we use what we have to reach the most people. We talked about online, and John mentioned that, like having the content and the services online at the Kenya Education Cloud. We talked about radio, we talked about TV. The online part, for instance, that requires internet, something that has been highlighted as a challenge. But there is also SMS that can be used that does not require internet, that can also be used. How do we take the content that is currently available online and break it down in smaller sizes so that it can be delivered via SMS, for instance? That allows you to reach far more people than if you just keep it online. So there is creativity in using what we have, but that creativity doesn't stop there. We need to look at how do we go even further. So for instance, we talk about teachers, and John mentioned teachers, and the issue of connectivity that they have. Part of that is to look at how do we make this, for instance, free rating. How can we work and collaborate with telcos so that for the content or even the services of education, that there is some planning or some disposition to allow some free rating around those issues. So, I mean, we need to be creative. It's not going to be one thing. It's going to be a multitude of things.
Thank you. It's not going to be one thing. Jennifer, your thoughts?
I think, I would just add to that I think it's important for those of us that are coming up with new innovations to be starting with listening first. So, seeing our stakeholders, seeing parents, seeing students themselves, seeing teachers as co-creators in this process, that we're deeply understanding the context of what people are going through, especially as we think about this idea of being inclusive of all learners. So what do students in refugee camps need? What do students with special needs, how are we thinking about designing tools and platforms that are inclusive of different types of learning situations and contexts to make sure that we're truly bringing everyone along with us and making sure that we're building tools and experiences that are relevant and engaging and responsive to the needs of those different communities.
Thanks for that. We've got some excellent questions and comments coming in that I'm going to just tap into now. Dora Achieng-Okeo says, this is a great discussion. It seems that KICD is focusing more on learners in either primary or secondary schools. What about higher education? How are you addressing the gaps in higher education? John, I'll bring that to you in just a moment. Joey Otieno says, the crucial component that we need to really focus on is parental empowerment and support, which was mentioned earlier, of course. They're the crucial bridge, almost like conduit between teachers, tech, and students. So parents are critical to make this ecosystem function. How do we bring them on board fully? Robertina Mbula says, there are students and pupils in very remote areas who only know that there is a very bad disease that's making them not go to school. The access to tech facilities to enable them to access education is lacking. How do such students get help in these COVID times? So 3 really, really great perspectives there. Maybe let me start, John, by coming to you with a whole question around, beyond schooling, into whether it's any vocational, your university, what's happening, what are you doing in that respect?
Thank you. I will respond to that, but just before I respond to it, it is true that we need support from all areas and the sectors should come together so that there is delivery as one. And we have approached the service providers in Kenya, and in our estimate, a teacher needs at least 1 GB to 2 GBs for a day, and that's what we have been requesting for. And these are efforts that I think Joseph has also mentioned. And the other challenge that is there is content. You need content. And this comes together with, can the teachers be able to generate the content that the other teachers will also be using? And these are the innovative ways that we should come through so that they become good enough. On the question of what about education, why are we having so much focus on basic education, or what we call early learning and basic education, is because looking at it, even by the time COVID was coming, the higher education, the universities were already into technology use, and therefore their rollout was not difficult. It was like the same internet we have been using in school in the library, we can employ it in this other way. But the other area of primary and secondary was really down, and that's why there is this focus in that direction. Today, you'll see universities in Kenya saying they are taking the end of semester examination, and they are going on. Their challenges are retro as compared to the challenges that the primary and secondary have. And therefore, if we are able to solve that major problem that is there in the basic education, the other one is already solved. Because if we extend in terms of access, we multiply the access, then the other one will also be sorted out. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Joseph and Jennifer, the 2 questions of parents, bringing them on board, a key stakeholder, and the other of, the most marginalized who just do not have access. Jennifer, let me start with you on these.
So first, I'll say absolutely, parents are a critical stakeholder, and I think that's outside of any conversation of EdTech, beyond just that conversation of EdTech. Parents are critical in their child's learning, but I think especially when it comes to embracing technology as a part of the learning experience. So I think the things that we need to do and help parents with, especially during this time, are helping them understand how to support that learning most effectively. I think that's a combination of helping them know how to organize a student's learning day. It's about finding the great content that John was just referencing. So whether that's coming through government channels, if it's coming through private EdTech providers, how do they find great quality resources that are going to be the right level for their young person? And then I think it's about supporting families to solve for some of the other challenges that families are going through right now. So, schools do more than just teach content. Of course, they provide for social elements. They provide for meals. There's a lot of programs right now that are helping to provide those wraparound services, both psychosocial supports for young people and their families, their parents, to make sure that they're able to deal with the trauma that may be surrounding them during COVID. They're helping to provide some meals so that students are not going hungry and able to learn effectively with full bellies. So I think there's a lot of supports that we can provide to parents and guidance that we can provide to parents. I know there's some really interesting initiatives. There's an organization called Accelerated in Ethiopia that's actually put together a small, an app, a parent coaching platform to help parents deal with the challenges during this time. So, you know, there's a lot of innovations out there that we can be thinking about. How do we give parents the right resources to be able to respond during this time? In terms of reaching really remote learners, I think it's a great question, and it's still something that I think we're all learning and trying to figure out together. So obviously this is where radio comes in and becomes really powerful. Even TV, you know, Obongo was sharing some information, and, you know, it's challenging when, you know, a lot of the TV programs are those, you know, people in remote areas are coming together in physical locations together to watch those programs. So they may not have access to those things. You know, mobile networks may not be consistent enough for them to use those devices all the time. So I think it's about using a variety of strategies. And I think it's about sourcing the data from those communities to see what's really working and what else we need to be doing to make sure that they have access. There's been a couple of great reports recently by Uwezo, by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, sort of capturing different insights on what are the technologies that are available, how are people utilizing those. So I think listening and paying attention to some of that information and continuing to keep those feedback loops open, gathering that data so we can continue to innovate, continue to reach more and more people with the content that's there.
Thanks for that, Jennifer. Just as I come to Joseph, let me ask the parents who are watching, does it sound good? Some kind of app that engages and trains parents and supports you? Does that sound good? And if it does sound good, what's the one
Well, I think it looks like we lost Julie. Maybe I'll go ahead and start answering her question as we wait for her to come back. You know, Jennifer, I think that the question that Julie had asked is really up the alley of the member of your organization. It creates an opportunity for them as, you know, as an opportunity, as you spelled out, the organization. Oh, Julie's back.
Continue. This is our new world.
Okay. All right. So I just went ahead and started answering your question as you were coming
Great.
back.
Great.
So I think that it is true that the parents are now finding themselves in in an area where they were not prepared to be. They were prepared, obviously, to be parents, but not to be teachers. And I think providing them the help that they need to do that is a great opportunity for the EdTech community. So I look forward to seeing a lot of solutions coming out to do just that, you know. And also, yeah, sure. And also the role of teachers, right? Because we keep talking about the teachers. In the past, we had one person fulfilling that role of a teacher. As people are discussing the role of the teacher in the future, there is a lot of conversation around the teaching workforce. That is, it is going to be a number of people participating in the effort of educating a student or a learner. There will be the teacher, there will be the parent or the guardian. There would even be other people along the way. So it's going to be a chain of people. And I think that this has been one of the lessons that we've learned out of this COVID-19 pandemic. And so I hope that when we're thinking about solution, we think about the learner, we think about the primary teacher, but we think around the entire teacher, or teaching workforce in that. It's really a great opportunity for the EdTech community.
Back again. Sorry. Are we together? We are. I see smiles. I see Joseph smiling and Jennifer nodding. Let's hope it continues. But this is what people are going through every single day. You know, this is the reality. Some great input coming in. Thank you for that on parents, Joseph. Really incredibly helpful. And I think, you know, it goes beyond just, and I'm not sure if I missed this, it goes beyond the learning, the teaching. It goes to actually the role, even in some ways as a counselor. Wambui Moara says, children have a lot of anxiety due to this pandemic. Online learning requires a lot of self-discipline. Parents are also out working. How will these children learn coupled with all these issues? Very, very real factors. I want to also come to Madhoni Mercy, who says, what an insightful forum. I'm an educator and also wholly into the homeschooling sector. And ladies and gentlemen, I think this is a moment we need to really take our hats off to everybody who's been homeschooling, everyone in that space, and say there's lots we can learn. So great, thank you for your input. She says she's been in this area for a long time in Nairobi, both for the international curriculum and our own. A learner being able to feel that they've got control over their learning is highly motivating. There are no major pressures associated with conventional learning we have traditionally held. It's encouraging to see parents embrace homeschooling, and she goes more into that. John, let me come to you with this. There are people who have homeschooled incredibly successfully. And there are learnings we can take from that. Is the government and our policy makers trying to establish what's worked in homeschooling and how we can apply it to our new realities?
Thank you, Judy. As I answer your question again, I want to just add my voice to the parental empowerment. And our experience has been that whenever we come in with other parents at the beginning of the day and they're able to advise parents on how they are managing their children, it has been more powerful. Also coming in with some experts in that area who are able to talk about how do you manage young ones, that has also helped. You had a question on the remote areas. We have noted that again, it's a variety. Some places like the slum areas, we have ghetto radio. Other difficult areas, we have Jangwani radio, and other places they say it's better to provide them with the books that they can manage. So it's a variety of solutions depending on how the situation is. And indeed, yes, the government is considering coming up with the policies that would aid blended learning, that you're able to consider both face-to-face and what you get online as a combination that would fulfill the curriculum delivery, and also homeschooling and what we call online learning for basic education, because there are a lot of online courses that we're able to take even at university level and be able to complete, but in basic education has been the question. And with competence-based curriculum in terms of continuous assessment, and that also and make policies that are going to equate or compare the competences acquired and make policy the competences acquired through learning face-to-face, and then we will not be able to run away from the situation of graded learning, where we have to have a lot of combination and support by technology as we continue with learning in difficult times that are calling upon social spacing and other things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just coming to our poll result, we had asked a question online, and I'll also ask my technical team. Caroline Mutoko was also driving this conversation last week. If we're able to get her to join, I think I did see her briefly at the start. If we can get her back on to share her views and some of what her audiences have been saying, that would be great. Our poll question was, with schools closed, we've seen greater use of technology to deliver education. Do you think kids are truly learning through the new digital approaches being used to deliver education? What do you think the responses were, Joseph? Where do you think the poll was? Did people think that technology and digital approaches were working?
I think that it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
In the middle, you think, Jen? Where do you think, Jen? Yeah, where do you think it is, Jennifer?
My guess would be a lot of people would be responding less positively, because I think this was more of a was more thrust upon them than sort of a kind of a choice and a positive move. You know, I think it's important to distinguish during this time as well. What we're experiencing during COVID is kind of education in an emergency situation. So we've kind of moved to emergency distance learning, which is very different than kind of intentional, well thought out, well designed, well curated kind of experiences that are driven by technology. So, you know, during these times, I think it's important for us to recognize that we're not in the ideal situation, and we're not using technology in as best a way as we probably could if we had you know, lots of time to prepare for this and been able to sort of set the groundwork that we would want, or you know, if we had all of the sort of resources in place that we need to make these types of learning experiences work more effectively. So my sense would be a little bit more frustrated during this time than positive response.
Okay. John, we had asked people whether they think digital approaches, whether children are truly learning through these digital approaches. What do you think, people? Where do you think people stood before I issue the results?
I think people, the perception and the reality here don't really come together, because there's always this thing about technology and people want to run away from it. It's likely to go on the lower side, but then I think for my own thinking it is positive, because like in Kenya, when we started and I could move around the places, I could see children are concentrating and children are not outside the house. But the minute we said that we will repeat all over again, that whatever is going through the technology will be repeated, now you see now the concentration also went down. So let's see how it is.
So the results, the question, do you think kids are truly learning through the new digital approaches being used to deliver education? Yes, 19.3%, no, 80.7%. So people are worried, they are apprehensive, they are clearly concerned. There's a lot of anxiety. And you know, there's a couple of things I'll say. I'd really like to tap into each of you as we take some final thoughts and comments from those watching, and then prepare to close. That, you know, how do we think about learning? My youngest son watches these Nigerian comedians constantly. And the amount of information he keeps in his mind just from these videos. So a lot of the edu TV could be incredibly purposeful. Perhaps it's also how the classes are delivered. And maybe we need to think a little bit about how to support the different parents with the realities they face. And so I think this has been mentioned before. We have a series of interventions that meet the requirements of people in different geographical areas, you know, with different capacities. So, but I will come back to you guys for a moment on how we move forward, considering there's so much. People are facing challenges. 19.3% say yes, digital learning is happening with these new technologies. 80.7% say no. Just taking a look at some of the comments. Afrojib Network. Even as we focus on education, there is a need to ensure learners get access to quality education. Absolutely, thank you for that. So Sarah Abdel Salam contributes again. She says, I'm sure parents are not happy about the current environment. Francis Otieno Amonde says, digital learning is a great idea, but its practicality in areas where network coverage is low or inaccessible is a concern. Francis, I know Francis Otieno Amonde does incredible work with people in various different areas in the informal settlements in Nairobi right now, but also in in Nyanza with a lot of communities on the ground. Do share with us, what do you think would work? How can we plug that into our conversations? We'd love to know. Share that with us. And I'll take one final comment from Jos Daryl. Our continent is already experiencing a low digital literacy, which implies educators as well. How do we go about empowering educators at the same time educating our nation without missing out on time? What an excellent question. I believe our teachers and our administrators are our champions in education. We really need to hold their hands, support them, and take them on the journey. Considering all the comments that have come in particular, maybe this final one on the focus on our educators. What are our next moves forward? What are the critical next steps? Jennifer, for you, what are the must-dos?
So I think this call to action in terms of making sure that teachers have the digital literacy, that they have the experience, the training they need to be supported to address learners. And I think that happens through a variety of contexts. I don't think it's just in a digital context. I think it's, how do we make sure that teachers can support through WhatsApp, through mobile phones, even calling families when needed? How do we make sure that they understand the different tools and resources that are at their disposal, and how to use those most effectively? How do they guide students? How do they guide parents? How are they learning from one another? I think all of those are really important pieces for us to figure out. I think it's also, we have so many people who care about this, right? We have so many EdTech companies and entrepreneurs who are building great platforms and products to serve students and families. We have, the government is obviously jumping in and prioritizing this, of course. We have funders, we have researchers, we have a lot of people that are coming together to try and help us answer this question of what really works. I think it's to all of us to continue to share, continue to say when things are working, when they're not working, continue to be humble and listen and be willing to say, we are in a phase of experimentation. We are trying to figure these things out and we're all doing it together. So let's all be on the same side. Let's all, try and work together to make that possible. And I think, we've got to continue to collect the data. That data is really, really important to make sure that we're actually getting a true picture of what learning looks like in this context. And again, what it looks like for all learners.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. Joseph, next steps, what do they look like? You're in it, I have to say.
So, Julie, I think being in it could be a good thing or a bad thing, because you tend to breathe this thing, and you can see how off I was, because I thought it was going to be in the middle, but 19 was at 19.3%. That was very drastic. It would be interesting to see what the answer would be if we added that is in comparison to the school learning. So we can kind of see if we're talking about education in general, or we're talking about just the EdTech part, to kind of separate the two and then sort of like understanding. I think Jennifer touched on a number of things that we need to do. We need to look at education holistically. We need to make sure that we move education from being school-centric to being learning-centric. And that would mean that you're able to learn at school and outside the school as well. I think that would make sure that we are prepared for when we have things such as this pandemic, that the learning will continue to happen. And also, it will make sure that the lessons and the support that we provide to the teachers is really consistent to this fourth industrial revolution world that we live in. The relevance come to play. If those are designed in such a way, we would be able to deliver the learning, whether in the school compound or whether it's at home. And I think we need to really keep that as our North Star, as we address the challenges that have been so highly pointed out, so to speak. And I think that the collaboration, the type of collaboration we have seen in the last 3 months are things that we hadn't seen for decades. So it just means that the wheel can be really directed, and we can come together to come together and find solutions. So my hope is that we'll continue this collaboration, and also we'll continue this conversation, so that the parents, the community is part of the solution. And I think with that, we are most likely going to succeed. So I'm positive.
Oh, great. Stay positive. You know, we've taken a quotable quote from you, from school-centric to learning-centric. So, so powerful and so important. John, let me come to you. Next steps.
This has been covered, and you know, whenever we talk about next steps, we find ourselves in a situation where are we? Is learning going on? And I think even the 19 point something %, I want to take it as positive, that there's some learning going on. I want to treat it as positive and say that the current situation needs to be improved. And even after we improve, that other improved situation will need to be improved again. And Jennifer talked about continuous data taking, continuous listening. I'm seeing a situation whereby looking at what, Julie, you said about your youngest son and the way they are learning from other formats, then it means we need to also re-engineer our formats so that they become formats that are resonating with the learners themselves. We may find ourselves in a situation whereby the curriculum may need reframing, so that then what we are taking, like what happens in school is what we want to take to technology, may not be the same. It may be a need for us to reconsider that curriculum reframing, so that what happens in school and what happens on technology becomes something that is pretty comparable. And I think that is where Joseph was saying, if we are just looking at learning happening in technology, we never ask that question, is learning happening in school? So that we are then looking at it from the same point. I want to just add again on digital literacy. When we went to look at competency-based curriculum, we realized that our digital literacy level is low. And we came up with 7 key competencies, and digital literacy was one of them. What we have been doing is every time we look at the curriculum of a certain level, we create a digital literacy framework. Indeed, today, we started creating the digital literacy framework for grade 10, 11, and 12. So that as we develop curriculum in that area, then we are able to bring in every subject the degrees of digital literacy that are good. I think that way, when it comes from the learners and all the way into teacher training, then we are going to move in a situation whereby learning in school face-to-face, everywhere, and even in technology will make meaning. And that's, I think, that those are the next steps to ensure that our digital literacy is good, the curriculum framing is good, and then even the formatting that we are putting on technology is good formatting, resonating with the learner.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask each of you just to prepare a parting shot, literally 10, 20 seconds. What's the final word you want to leave us with? As we do that, you know, it's just so important that, you know, you pose the question that, you know, we want to ensure people learn on these platforms, these using technology, but are they learning in school as well? We've got to ask that question. We've got to ask, is the learning that they're doing in school working for them in the real world? So again, we look at the disconnect between, you know, a lot of our learning and market, you know, opportunities, so jobs, etc. So really interesting that somebody said, you know, you never let a good crisis go to waste. This is an opportunity for us to put our heads together and start to figure out what really works for our young people, for our learners, and for our communities and societies. I'll read a few final messages and then come to you for your parting shots. Steffi Gasana says, thank you for this important distinction between school-centric versus learning-centric and the amazing, encouraging collaboration that has taken place. So thank you, and let's not stop. let's stay optimistic. Nimo Isabel says, fantastic discussions with great insights. Thank you, panelists. Thank you guys so much. Lucy Mimo Mwakaba says, there's need to look for ways to engage the learners and make it as interactive as possible. Lecture method will not necessarily work. We're saying that the world is moving away from the sage on the stage. And even when we look at our realities, for instance, in agriculture, is it not better to take a child outside and plant with them than to teach it in the classroom so we continue to learn? Final remarks from each of our panelists. What would you like to really leave us with top of mind? And Joseph, I'll begin with you.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks the other panelists as well as the audience. It's been a very interesting conversation, one that I hope will continue to be had. Parting words, I think that education is our business. All of us, as parents, as community, as EdTech, as policymakers, we must continue collaborating in order to improve education. It is our only salvation. So I hope that this collaboration that has started will continue. And as I said before, I'm optimistic. I'm a technologist, so I believe that technology can actually play a role, a positive role, but it won't solve all the problems. We must identify those problems that technology can address and address them with technology, but we must also address education comprehensively. So thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Let me come to John.
Thank you. I also believe that education is every time and everywhere, and it is for everyone to put an effort on it. Education technology is not nuclear science. It is use of everyday device and everyday technology that we are using for purpose of learning. Thank you.
Asante Sana, the final word, Jennifer, is yours.
So much so many great insights already shared, but I think I'll just add that that your voice matters, and that means everyone's voice, every student, every teacher, every parent, every policymaker. I think the more that we can continue to have these conversations and we can continue to learn from the different perspectives on how to make these learning experiences relevant, how we make them fun, how we make kids love learning, and the ways in which we use technology most effectively to support that. I think we can only do that together. So I think, for all of us, let's keep having these conversations. Let's come back, for EdTech Mondays, but even beyond, in your schools, in your communities, with other parents. Let's keep sharing those ideas so we can continue to improve and make this work for everyone.
Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. To all our panelists, thank you so much for making time. To everybody who joined this session, really appreciate your time. That's it from EdTech Mondays for this first Monday. Have a brilliant week ahead, and we'll connect with you, no doubt, in the next Mondays to come. Bye-bye. Thank you. Great. I think I would imagine we are off live.